3,000 years ago, there was a man in Israel that was wiser and was richer than anyone else. And he sought out to find out what was the purpose of his life. What was the purpose of living on earth? So he searched through with all the worldly pleasures he could get. And finally, at the end of his writings in Ecclesiastes, he writes these words in verse 13 of Ecclesiastes 12. Let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. So for the next few minutes, I'd like to take a look at these 2 points that he makes and see how we can apply them to our everyday lives. So number one, he tells us to fear God. When I think of fearing God, I think of Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews chapter 12, starting verse 18. Here, this is a recount of what happened in Exodus 19 when God delivered the law on Mount Sinai. Verse 18, for you have not come to the mountain that may be touched and that burned with fire, to the blackness and darkness and tempest, and the sound of a trumpet and the voice of words, so that those who heard it begged that the word could not be spoken to them anymore. For they could not endure what was commanded, and if so much as a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned or shot with an arrow. And so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I am exceedingly afraid and trembling. And the Hebrew writer goes on to say that Jesus is a mediator for the new covenant. But the picture that God has here of him being powerful, he is not this loving grandfather he is loving, he is compassionate, but he is a powerful God. He is the creator of the universe, and he should be respected. Verse 28, therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us have grace by which we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear. We should respect God. When we serve him, we should respect God. And because in verse 29, our God is a consuming fire. He is powerful, he is just, and he will bring judgment. Leviticus chapter 10, verse 1 and through 3, the account of Nadab and Abihu. They did not serve God appropriately. God then killed them on the spot. Then in the very next verse, in Leviticus chapter 10, verse 3, he says, by those who come near me, I must be regarded as holy, and before all the people, I must be glorified. We should have respect for God in everyday life. We should have respect for God when we worship him. Also, the second part of man's all in Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13, keeping his commandments. Now, when we keep God's commandments, we can know that we are in him. Let's turn to 1 John chapter 2. 1 John chapter 2 and verse 3 says, now by this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He who says, I know him, and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps his word, truly the love of God is perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. John 14, verse 15, Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments. If we truly love God, we will keep his commandments. We will do what he says, and we will serve him every day. As we come to the conclusion of the short lesson, we come to the last verse of Ecclesiastes in 12. So why do we fear God? Why do we keep his commandments? Why do we love him? But in verse 14, Solomon gives the reason. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. My question for you today is, do you fear God, and do you keep his commandments?